One of these things we just talked about a second ago, so we can kind of buzz right through it. But
Sam Pittman?
No. Number 5 here on Top 5 Monday Thoughts. What is Texas without Quinn Ewers? That is going to be an interesting thing as they move forward through the next few weeks, which I assume this is probably going to be 2 or 3 games because shoulder injuries don't just kind of go away, especially when your shoulder is pretty important if you're the quarterback and has to throw the ball. What is Malik Murphy? What is the offense? Who the opponents that he does face? How many chances do they take? How does Steve Sarkisian use his athleticism? These are all big questions, and we'll get to see them on hand against BYU on Saturday. We'll see. I think that they're at home the next 2 weeks, so that's also pretty fortunate for Malik Murphy as well.
Yeah, can he play in the secondary too?
Yeah.
Can we get him some more athletes
Jalen
back there?
Catalon's gone too, right?
Yeah, he's been gone.
Yeah,
but
not coming back either. Yeah.
Oh, not coming back. Yeah. He's been dinged, which is the story of his career, really. And
Yeah,
that was always the fear
Yeah.
when they brought him in was like, man, the potential is out of this world, but can he stay healthy because he couldn't at Arkansas and now he can again, and I really hate that for him. It's unfortunate, but. Yeah, I mean, Ewers took that big pop, man, trying to, anytime you see a quarterback running the football, you always kind of worry a little bit. And sure enough, he tried to get big and he got leveled. And I think Sark said afterwards, I need to go back and listen, but he tried to indicate he was on a different play or something. I'm like, that's pretty clear where it looked like he got his shoulder injured was when he went shoulder to shoulder with the defender.
I tell you what, was that not a collision where
Yeah.
neither body moved?
But I thought I read earlier that Sark tried to say it was another play, but I'm like, I don't think so. I think it was that one right there.
Paxton saying it happened on a sack.
Okay.
Maybe he was landed on, and then that
Sure.
happened, and that just maybe if there was a rib that was detached, maybe that's what did it.
Well, that set it up or set it off. That hit had to have mattered in some regard, but however it happened, that's unfortunate. And we get to see Malik Murphy now. A lot of people have high hopes for him, and Arch will be one play away if need be as well. You hope it doesn't come to that if you're UT though, but. Yeah, this makes it a very interesting couple of weeks, if not longer. That's the thing, too, is we don't know how long he'll be out, but it does seem like at least a couple of games. So, yeah, it's the Malik Murphy show, and that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, it's not season ending, but they're still, what season
I think
does that
what
mean?
sometimes this can do is make your team with all the guys you have around them, make them even more locked in and focused. They'll be fine. But it won't be easy.
No, but I mean, look, the schedule's also not as easy as everybody thought it was 3 weeks ago either.
No, you're right.
So that's true.
Well, the BYU game is that'd be more interesting in Provo, but they're feisty and they got a big win, and K-State obviously is looking pretty tough right now. TCU, but Iowa State's in Ames in a few weeks. That'll be good, and then Tech by the end of the year. I mean, who knows?
And then you start to have like really bad weather that kind of comes in the mix that could also affect it. Midwest, North, whatever.
Yeah, like Iowa State in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it could be just cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So number 4. How does Dabo respond to 2023? Like they've got 3 losses now, so they're just jockeying for position, and maybe they can get a dub over North Carolina. Although with the playmakers that North Carolina has and the way that they just lost, I pity their next couple of opponents because they've got to try to get back in the race, and they're up against it right now. So how does he respond? Does he make those necessary changes? And here's the other thing. Garrett Riley was really sought after, and they went and got him. What does Garrett Riley do after this? Does he go somewhere, maybe riding off the high? Like, could he be a 1-year hired gun, and then he leaves, and then Dabo's kind of back to square one?
Are you telling me
that
Dabo will ask him to leave?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying that, if you're Garrett Riley and this didn't work out the way you thought it would, because I do think part of this was you go be the OC at Clemson after what you did at TCU, then if you helped Clemson get back to the mountaintop, then your phone's ringing for head coaching jobs. But right now, and really I don't think it's through any fault of his own, but that offense just doesn't hit. I mean, he didn't bring in those players.
Some of it has to be his own.
Yeah, but I mean, they didn't have the players I think he thought he was going to go in and have.
Would you take most of their players if you were 90 other schools in college football?
Yeah. I mean, look, the only position, here's the other thing that's really sad for Clemson. The only position they're deficient at is wide receiver. Cornerback, great. Linebacker, they have 2 guys that are first-round picks. Defensive line, 4 NFL guys. Offensive line, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about his head coaching opportunities this offseason because his stock was way hotter last year. But, yeah, I mean, that's always a possibility, and who the heck knows. But, I mean, before they even get to North Carolina, they got Notre Dame in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So they've got both of those games still lined up. And, you don't really worry too much about, like, Georgia Tech, I don't think, at this point. But, there are, at least a couple, if not, 3 or 4 opportunities in these last 5 games where if they're not careful, they could slip up. So including South Carolina at the end of the year, even if the Gamecocks aren't the mightiest team in the world either. But, yeah, Notre Dame in a couple weeks and then and UNC a couple weeks after that. So they're going to have to be careful to avoid like a 7-5-ish type of season, which, given all of the circumstances and just expectations would be a brutal finish. But they're right there on the cusp of it.
Number 3. What do we make of Washington's scare? Is this the Arizona schools really put a charge into Washington. 15-7. You probably didn't see it because it was at 1:30 in the morning if you were not on the West Coast. But Michael Penix had a really, kind of a blah game. It was 15-7. They won. They essentially won the game at a pick 6. And Arizona State, who's not, near the top of the Pac-12, pushed them to the limit. Do you guys take anything from this, or is this their scare?
I sort of just took it as their scare. I do think that you've got to be able to run the ball a bit better. Overall, when you rely as much as you do on Penix in the passing game, I do worry about it as a team in general like that. But I took this as a scare. I'm sure there's other evaluations or reviews of it that we probably can dive a bit deeper. But that's sort of how I took this one. But it definitely had you like, uh-oh, what's going on here after that big win last week?
I just think that it's hard to win. We're almost like, okay, Washington's going to go unbeaten. Oregon, not everybody is. Someone's going to lose. Oklahoma. It's just we look at like there's going to be 7 teams that end up unbeaten, and there might be one by the end of the year. And even if somebody in the Pac-12 looks like they're going to run the table and beat all the teams that are really, really good too, someone like Arizona or Arizona State's going to pop them.
What do you think, Paul?
I think it was their hangover game. I mean, they had that big, gigantic win. But, it bears watching. Although if you look at everybody but Michigan in the top 10 or so, that's a contender, has had a scare or two. They've had 2. I mean, Arizona was a scare. Arizona State was a scare. Ohio State. Now, granted, their 2 scares have been against Notre Dame and Penn State, but scares nonetheless.
Washington's last 3 games, they've won by 18 points, including the 8
Yeah,
points
that was super. They needed like a pick 6 late, and they got very fortunate that game turned out the way that it did. That's what happens when you run into future Big 12 juggernaut Arizona State, though, and Kenny Dillingham and company. You know what? Those new Big 12 schools are starting to, like Utah's been doing their thing, but Arizona State are getting better and showing signs. And who am I missing here? Who's the 4th team? Utah, Arizona. Colorado. I mean, they're just sort of they had their bye week, and now I think that they're trying to ramp it back up and finish strong. But they obviously were the toast of the town. So as much as that was all poo-pooed on at the time of like, well, those programs like the Arizona schools have actually had some good moments this year, and I'm interested to see how they can kind of carry that over.
Dillingham said a comment: if you're a 300-pound kid walking on campus, we need you. Did you hear about that? Because they've had so many injuries.
They're 1-6, so don't let me get those comments blown out of proportion. But I do think you see signs on occasion. You're like, all right, I can see where this is going.
Number 2, what do we make of OU's scare? I'm very curious in your thoughts on this one, Craig. Again, this was for Texas and Oklahoma and Washington in particular. These were all games right after the big, gigantic rivalry game and Texas's big disappointment at the end, Oklahoma's big, announcement to the nation of them being on the scene again, and Washington with that. So some of this, I think, is a little bit of trap game-ish things where you're coming back down off the bye, but UCF with John Rice Plumlee is kind of a different animal.
No, they are. Let's give them credit because they played really well from start to finish. And we're kind of making excuses for some of these teams that barely won, but it's hard to win. I just think that there's a lot more parity in college football than sometimes we realize.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma jumped out to an early lead and looked like it was going to be the game you kind of expected it to be. And I just think the poor execution in a lot of ways is what doomed them. Some missed opportunities. You allow UCF to have hope. You allow them to make a couple plays and feel like they're right in it. And the next thing you know, you're in a fight you weren't necessarily expecting to be in. So I do think it was a little bit of, just I guess, letdown, if you will. But I just think that UCF took advantage of the opportunities that OU gave them and gave them a scare, no doubt about it. But I don't fear for, like, there's nothing about that game where I'm like, oh man, they exposed this, or and
there were some guys running free again. That's what
Yeah, but I mean, it's also UCF coming off of a bye week, and it's Gus Malzahn who's throwing all sorts of weird stuff at you and trickery and things like that, and so it's not the easiest team to also prepare for. But I think the defense still played, and showed that it can bow up and make stops, and so. I think that was a game where just left the door cracked open and could have shut it maybe a little bit earlier. And when you didn't do that, it opened the floodgates and you found yourself in a bit of trouble.
You're in a track meet.
Yeah. And number one, what is the future for USC? That's the about fourth disappointing game in a row for them and the second loss in a row. And every single one of them has the same kind of thing, is that they're not tough enough to hold leads. They aren't good enough to jump out on some of these teams, or they've got to come back. It's for a team that was supposed to be in the CFP discussion, they look so far away from that. And having the best player overall in the country, too, really makes it sting a lot more. And then Lincoln Riley with not letting the players talk. This is...
that was childish. That was such high school.
All bad stuff.
Notre Dame, right? Utah, 21-14. They still have numbers 5, 8, and 23 on their schedule rest of the way.
I want to go back to Oklahoma for a second. There are a couple things that still worry me. And that's the run game.
Yeah.
The fact that you couldn't run better than you did against UCF. Just in general, I wonder about the run game and how consistent it can be. And you've got to make field goals. And that was something that was a part of their mistakes early on in that game. But moving on to USC, I don't know. I think a couple more losses are probably on their plate. At least one more loss is on their plate. And beyond that, Lincoln Riley getting rumored for NFL jobs is probably on the menu as well. But that was not a good look on Saturday night, and they were going to win that game. I mean, they found a way to come back and nearly win that game, and then the Bear Alexander penalty happens, and I could not believe that. I could not and he's sitting there on the sideline crying, and I feel for the guy, but at the same time, I'm like, that was just such a dumb penalty. Like, that was inexcusably dumb. But if not for that, then we're talking about them winning. So, like, they're towing that line of, it seems all bad, and it's obviously bad when you've knocked yourself out of the playoff with your second loss, but you were this close to that being a massive win, right? So they're still going to be plenty dangerous, but their hopes are, for the most part, the big ones dashed, and you just wonder about Lincoln Riley and where his head's at.
What's he going to do, quit?
Go to the NFL.
Caleb Williams going to quit? I
don't think so.
I know that those are some of the responses, and if college football gets to a point where right now I get players maybe skipping a bowl game, even though that's taken hard for me, just old school. But I know, like NIL and transfer portal, things are new. If we get to a point now where players start shutting it down midway through the year because they can't win a Heisman Trophy or a national championship, I don't know if that's gonna be hard for me to fathom. That's gonna be hard for me to deal with. And I know, Emmett, get off my lawn. All right, Garrett, thank you very much. LSU meanies.